we're live and on air. Today is August 13th in some parts of the world, and this is our weekly Backdrop developer meeting to talk about active core development tasks and other related issues. Before we get into the agenda, I'd like to take a minute for everybody to go around and introduce yourself. You can say what your name is, where you're from, and if you want to share something with us that's not in the agenda, you have 30 seconds or less to do so. Greg, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece just to catch up on the weekly things that are happening with core and help us message.
Thanks. Tim, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Tim, St. Paul Tim in many places. I am here in Minnesota, Deerwood, Minnesota, and I have been indulging myself in the issue queue the last 2 weeks, so lots of things that I'm interested in. But that's all.
Great. Tuheen, do you want to go next?
Did you call me?
Mamadou?
Hello, my name is Mahmoudul Hassan and I am from Bangladesh, and Backdrop going good, and I'm working on it. Thanks.
Nate.
I'm Nate Lampton. I'm in Oakland, California, and there's a lot in the agenda. I don't have anything to add, so. Ta-da.
Justin, are you there? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I guess my name is Justin. I'm in Denver, Colorado, and just help out where I can with infrastructure or whatever. So, thanks.
Olaf, would you like to
Yeah,
introduce?
I'm Olaf from Hamburg, Olaf Kaminski. And yeah, I haven't been in the meetings for quite a while, so I want to check in again.
Great. Joseph?
I'm Joseph. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a backend developer, and I've been working on the automatic PHP CS running. So yeah.
And Jason?
Yeah, I'm Jason from Las Vegas, Nevada, also a backend developer also. And I'm on the Zoom channel so I can work pre and post recording conversations and occasionally add a comment if I'm feeling cantankerous.
Great. I'm Jen Lampton. I'm calling from Oakland, California. I'm very excited about getting to all of this stuff in the agenda. To start off, there's a new contributed module this week, the anti-scan module, which I'm excited about because it will prevent known bots from causing problems on your site. So things like scrapers that try and visit like WP admin pages and stuff like that will get blocked, which is great. And we have a bunch of stuff in the general discussion section. So we're going to skip everything else except for project updates. So let's turn it over to Nate to talk about what's gone into Backdrop Core this week.
Okay, so we have a number of issues that haven't seen a lot of progress, and I'm not going to go over them again because I haven't seen any updates this past week. But 3 issues that we have that are still in a state that they all need testing include update.php throwing errors about installation and telling you to delete your config directory is issue 3846. That has not progressed, but still needs manual testing. The site getting stuck in maintenance mode when updating modules, issue 3956, same story there. And reviewing the views pager by date functionality that is useful for calendaring, issue 2766, also still just needs some review. So those 3 issues, same status there. This next issue, visual regression in the text format order form, in the text format order on overview form. This is issue 4407. This was a regression in 116 that reordering the text formats didn't appear to make any change, didn't appear to save when you change the order. That one got merged finally, so I'm really happy to see that. Let's see, I believe that Indigo Zala, thank you for doing the review on that. BW Panda, thank you for filing the issue. This next one, PHP-CS automated code checks. There's been some progress on that. I know Jen has been working on that today. Joseph has been working on it for the past week at least. I'm not the best person to give the update here. Jen, do you want to give the introduction to it, and then maybe Joseph can provide some details?
Sure. So the big picture goal here is that we want to make it so that anytime anyone submits a pull request against Backdrop Core or any contrib project that they choose to add it to, we'll get automatic syntax checking so that the pull request will fail with useful messages to the user if there's something that they need to fix that isn't going to require a human reviewer to catch and return. There's a module for Drupal called Coder that includes syntax checking. We have a version of that for Backdrop, and Backdrop it's called Coder Review. But the syntax checks use a tool called PHP-CS or PHP Code Sniffer that is very out of date in the Backdrop version. And there are 3 Drupal issues to bring it up to various different versions for Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. And so we just need to figure out how to get the Backdrop version up to recent versions, and then we can write a patch against core that'll set up automatic code checking. So there's kind of 2 pieces involved. One is getting our Coder Review module updated, and the other one is getting that applied to Backdrop Core to apply the checks. And Joseph has done a bunch of work this week on getting Coder Review updated. So I don't know, Joseph, if you want to do any work or any give us an update on how that's going.
Yeah, so, well, I was kind of just updating it. I started working on this back in March, where I've updated all of our sniff files so that they work with the 3.x version of PHP Code Sniffer. And I've created a pull request against Coder Review. And then we've been trying to test getting that to, I don't know, run against a pull request on one of Jen's contrib projects. And it seems to work so far. Jen and Laren have both tried it, and it seems to work fine on locally, but we're having trouble with the actions getting it to run properly.
So I don't know how to run it locally, but it failed in actions. But it looked like it ran okay, but it didn't work. So I told it to run, and it ran, but it didn't actually do what it was supposed to do.
Yeah,
So
the error, it looks like the error is from an older version of the module. Like that's the error that would happen if you tried to run the old version of the module against the newer version of PHP Code Sniffer.
Okay. So what I did was take the latest release and apply the patch, but maybe I need to take a dev version and apply the patch.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, so I just took the pull request from 14, but I don't know what's happened between when Coder Review was released and the latest head, and I imagine your focus is against the latest head. So I'll see if I can get GitHub Actions to pull head instead of the latest release. But
You can directly pull the branch from my repo.
I was unable to do that on GitHub Actions.
Okay.
But doesn't mean it's impossible, just that I was not able to do it. Yeah, I can't seem to do anything with Git directly. So I need like a tarball to wget. So that's why I was using the release.
Okay.
But
well, there is a zip file. You can get a zip file of any branch.
Okay.
Seems like a reasonable thing to do there is, merge the pull request so that you don't have to apply the patch. But if we're updating the API version of the underlying Code Sniffer library, we should probably make a new branch, like a 2.x branch of Coder Review, and say like the 2.x branch uses the newer Code Sniffer, and then leave the current 1.x branch as it is.
The Doc1 wants the current maintainer. but we could open an issue requesting that.
All right, yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Let's see, I lost my notes. Here we go. All right. Okay, so we also have this kind of low-hanging fruit section of the current release, things that are potentially pretty easy. First one we have is setting a reasonable max input vars setting, issue 38 to 24. Jen wrote a documentation page for that. Thank you, Jen. It looks really good. The status that we have on the agenda here is needs work, but is the pull request ready to go, and the documentation just needs work? Or does the pull request need to be updated for the new page that was just created?
Last time I checked, the pull request did not yet have a link to the documentation page because the documentation page didn't exist. So now that the page exists, the pull request needs to be updated.
Yeah, and we can, now that we just have a page to point at, we can update the pull request, get that merged in, and then iterate on the documentation page.
Yep.
Let's see, removing the block title for the search box, issue 3476. I don't think there's been progress on this one. Just needs review. That's a nice fix. It's just and real simple. I don't think that there's much to it. Fixing the views or behavior, issue 3415. Similar story here. This is another one that needs some review, some manual testing in particular. This next one, I'm not sure if this one's really an almost done or an easy one. Maybe we should pull this into the high importance bug fixes that are not necessarily very easy.
Yeah, it's not easy or close.
Yeah, so CK Editor is not saving in source mode. This is issue 1259, that if you're editing a block, a custom block, and you switch CK Editor to source mode and then hit save, it doesn't actually save the changes that have been made in CK Editor. So status is that it still needs pull request.
Yep.
Tim?
I just say I'm looking for somebody with some JS skills to help me with that. So let me know if you can help me.
Okay. So we need an actual front end or JavaScript, I think is more accurate, help on issue 1259. And then lastly, we have these two issues to remove some deprecated terminology, including blacklist, whitelist, and master and slave from core. The issues are 4441 and 4451. Janet, do you know the status of these two issues?
There hasn't been any change since last week. The blacklist, whitelist issues, there's some questions on the pull request for a core committer or someone who might have some recommendations on how to handle some of the issues, like unsetting a session variable. And then the database master slave issue still has some problems with how the tests are running. I think I'm looking everything up. There's a lot of test failures, and I think the problems are actually with how the new databases stuff is going. So that definitely needs work.
Okay.
Those issues have quite a few changes, so we don't have to get everything right from the get-go. Like, we can iterate. So if there's easy ones that we can get rid from the code base, instances, just do it and then do follow-up pull requests. That's my thing. Because there's going to be certain things that are easy to fix, like comments or just text that is output in messages, and then there's going to be some variables that need changing, and these can be follow-ups.
Yep. Always good to get done the easy stuff.
Yeah, get it out of the way.
We also have 8 RTBC issues that are in the 116.3 queue. That's super duper awesome. I'll be going through those when I get a chance. And yeah, it's great to see all of the activity that's been happening. As we were bantering before we started the recording, also give a shout out to Peter, BW Panda, who has been doing an awesome job, not only reviewing pull requests as they've been coming in, but we've also been getting some merging happening both in the 117 queue and the 116.3 queue. So that's super duper awesome. Let's see, next up on the agenda is the 117 item list, the features that we're planning on getting into the next minor version of Backdrop, which will be coming out September 15th, 2020. Sort of one of the banner features here, I think that will be in 117 is Doc Wilmont's work on adding support for custom contexts to layouts. That's issue 3750. This is on my plate to take a look at it. I really have been trying to make time to take a look at this, and I think that I'm the right person to do that. So that's on my plate to take an eye, to take a look through it and read it, and check it out. Tim, did you have something that you were going to add? Okay. Let's see, next up, let's see, the administration theme for the login form, issue 4410. That issue is blocked, probably not going to happen in 117 because of the complexities of showing administrative only pages to anonymous users, or administrative only theming and block positioning, most importantly to anonymous users. We may still do some other peripheral actions like splitting out the view administration theme permission into contrib that will make that issue easier in the future. That's issue 4487. Current status of that one is it needs some work. Jen, sorry to ask you to just, do you know what work that needs?
No.
Okay, looks like Indigo Zella was the last person to take a look at it. And they just simply said that that the tests are failing. So it's too early to look at because the tests aren't even passing yet.
Okay.
Let's see, this one I haven't seen before, using htaccess for securing the config directories, issue number 706. An oldie but a goodie, an update from BW Panda, who's not actually in the meeting, but I'll read the issue here. BW Panda is now the advocate for this issue.
Yeah, he's actually lurking in the Zulip chat. He just posted a message like 5 minutes ago, 1 minute.
Could you read that if it's intended for public?
No, it's not. It's not related to this.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
All right.
But he is the advocate for this one, and he intended to bring it up.
Yeah, this is a great issue. It's been a long-standing thing ever since we've had a file-based config system. He opened this issue in February of 2015, which seems hard to believe that we have 5-year-old issues, but there we go. So this issue is that the config directories right now are hidden essentially by obscurity. They get random names attached to them, and that you can't access the config because they have a random name. And we also suggest in the installation instructions, advanced installation instructions, that you move the config directory outside of your web root so that they're not accessible over the web anyway, even if you did know the path. And this is a further security hardening that would make it so that if you were running Apache, htaccess would protect access to that directory. It's very similar to what we do for like private files. We encourage you to put private files outside of the web root, but if you have to leave it inside of the web root, or you prefer to keep it in there for some reason, then htaccess protects the private files directory. And this is the same thing essentially for the config directory. Current status of it looks like it needs testing and code review, which is great. That means it has a pull request already.
I'm thinking about file permission 444, or like that Drupal doing for configure 444 and 500. better than htaccess.
Yeah, that would prevent, oh, I see, right. It would prevent write access, but I think that it would still allow you to view an individual config file. I don't disagree though, like locking it down at the file system level, if you have permission on the web server, is a great idea.
That doesn't work in like the installer would need to write that directory. So that would also be like a very like manual issue, or I think if we can like automate it, that would be better. And for people who don't
Because I am thinking anyone can get access to htaccess, so he can remove the htaccess, so he can get configured file permission or something. So if we can block the config file separately with file permission, it should be better. I am thinking that.
I don't think that we have an issue for it in the queue. Can you please open the issue there?
He's proposing a different solution to the same problem, so.
No, an additional, I would say. Not different.
Yeah, I agree that having multiple approaches to it are probably best, rather than doing one versus the other. There's some situations where changing the file system permissions isn't feasible, and there's some situations where Apache isn't the web server, and so having alternatives that don't use htaccess is also a good thing.
That pull request is brand new, by the way, so just 2 days old, so.
That's wonderful. Okay, that's great. I'm not familiar with this next issue. Add URL alias as a machine name like field to node titles. It's issue 3393.
Olaf asked to put that on the agenda. Olaf, are you still there?
I'm still there. So do you want me to summarize? I don't know if I can, because I don't have a device to read the issue
Yeah,
at the moment.
I can help with that.
Sure.
So this is another issue that Peter has started, sort of like as an idea. Noticed some similarities between the way that the machine names work, like how as you type a name for a certain thing, it automatically generates the machine name, and it has a link to allow you to edit the machine name. And he thought that maybe that reusing that UI pattern for your aliases would also be an improvement. And it's something that WordPress has been doing in its 4.x versions. Instead of URLs, they used to call them permalinks, and they would allow you to edit it or copy them as you were editing the pages.
I think basically it just makes the path much more, exposes it, right? Something we can already do, but right now the option is buried down in the tabs. And what Peter is suggesting is that that's a useful feature that should be more prominent.
It's like that in WordPress. There's page title and URL right next to each other. Which is helpful.
Yeah, this is get into a big discussion here that there's on a lot of my client sites that we have a feature, or we try to create a feature where a user can modify only part of the URL alias, but not all of it. So we like to enforce things like the menu structure part of it is locked, but then the title part they can change. And so this kind of fits into that sort of thing where it's making the title part exposed.
I saw its Genesis framework. Here is they have a SEO part. So in this part, they can use alias and page title and meta info. That's the good thing, I think.
Okay.
But I don't think this
I
pull
also-
request handles that part of it yet. I think it's
No.
just like demonstrating conceptually, like as I type a title, this is what it's going to become if it's
Yeah.
automatically machine namified.
I think
So
the
it-
argument
it's a little bit-
against, go ahead, Gregory.
Yeah, so it needs a little bit of work. So it was more like a proof of concept and to give an idea how it would work. But the idea is that, for example, how machine names work is as you type, then they start showing up. Whereas with URL aliases, you might already have that showing, and instead of having it when you type the first letter. That's what I'm saying. Because then it sort of like appears out of nothing, out of nowhere. And it doesn't make as. Anyways, one of the things that Peter wanted to ask was he reused the machine name form API element to do that, so like hijacked it. And he said that maybe we will need to have a dedicated form element, which would be similar, sort of like clone of the machine name, but sort of like tweaked so that it fits for that purpose, for the URL aliases.
Okay.
So yes, so the counter argument is from Doc Wilmot, which says that he thinks that this was not as a feature that should be right in the face of content editors.
Olaf, you asked to put this on the agenda. What did you?
But
Why?
still I am thinking machine name is number is fine because here is plugin for SEO. So keep it as machine name with a numbering. That's fine. I am thinking.
Yeah, I asked
Because
to.
if anyone want to change the machine name to another name, they can use SEO module because SEO module is in backdrop. I think so.
The issue here is not to change the machine name; it's to change the path in a way similar to what we do for machine names. Olaf?
And this has some challenges still that clearly need to be worked out. Like if there's things in your URL alias besides the node title, giving the user an accurate preview becomes a lot more challenging. Like if you start including the date or menu item parents or the author's name, because as you're editing the node form, all of those values can change. And before you've saved the node, none of those values exist. So how can you give the user an accurate preview of a URL that includes the author's name when the author hasn't been set, or the date when the date hasn't been set, or the value of a field that is currently blank? You know, all of these things are possible with URL aliases. And the preview, this is only working with the node title, not all of the other tokens that could potentially be in the URL. So I'm not quite sure how big of scope this problem is trying to solve. If we're only demonstrating the node title, then we need to reconcile that with the rest of the URL. Or if we're trying to give an accurate demonstration of the entire URL, we need to figure out a way to represent that as well. Or maybe we continue through showing the placeholders and only swap out the node title token. You know, I don't know quite how that would work, but yeah, lots of things here.
If the motivation is just to make that more prominent, I mean, it seems to me the motivation is that in WordPress, you can see that permalink like really prominent, and they want something like that. So maybe the idea is right, just the solution is wrong. I don't know. I'm not sure about this issue yet.
I am thinking to keep on note ID, and note ID will be there. No need to change to paste title or something. If need, they can use SEO plugin or something, or they can type their permalink or page link, because otherwise it's too much task about machine language to paste title or something, because that's I am thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in order to really
And I am agree with Nate.
Yeah, I think in order to really move this issue forward, there's so many different ways that we could handle it. And there's lots of ways that we could describe it working that might not be technically feasible, like that might be actually impossible. I think that this needs more experimentation.
What we do
Yeah.
right now is with that field that's blank until it exists. And then once it exists, we put in the alias that was generated from the tokens. And we could do the same thing, just take that field and move it to the top of the page. And then it'll be empty until you save the node. And then once the node is saved and there's a database record, we pull the record from the database and display it there. So it might not show what'll happen when you hit save on the form, but it'll show like the current version that's in the database. And that might be enough of a visual indicator in a more prominent place where we wouldn't actually have to change any functionality, just move the stuff out of the vertical tab.
Yeah, see, I'm not even clear what the objective is. Like if we're trying to be more accurate, that's one thing. But if we're just trying to move where URL aliases are located to the top of the form, then that's another thing.
Yeah, and I question the motivation to put it at the top because it's not so important information, in my opinion. So often you don't need it, and also the pattern. So to show the machine name, to make it editable, it's more for site architects, I think, and they know it very well. But for content editors, it's not so important, and it's kind of clutters the node form, in my opinion. So I'm not clear what's about the motivation, if it's just people know it from WordPress. And I think WordPress doesn't do a very good job in this place. So it doesn't look very good, in my opinion, even in WordPress. So not all from WordPress is good.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I think
I'm thinking to use Node to or machine language to numeric language, so it will be easy to do this. If anyone need to add more page title or anything, they can use SEO plugin. This is out of our core. Thank you.
Yeah, I agreed. Contrib is a good place to experiment for this. But making core pull requests, if that's easier, it's a great place to get discussion, but I have a feeling this is going to turn into a rabbit hole real quick. It already has. We only have a couple minutes before the top of the hour, and I need to leave at that time. So I'm afraid that I won't be able to do the general discussion stuff, but I'm going to wrap up these last two issues that are in the 117 queue. So as I mentioned earlier, BW Panda has been doing some merging of issues, and he has two issues that went into 117 only. Adding a node ID to the node block class is issue 3730, a real simple change that just adds an additional default class when you place a block that contains a hard-coded node. So that's a really simple change. And then another issue, 4425, is allowing the selection of an existing date format for log messages. I think the intention here is that we allow users to specify a format for log messages that isn't shown anywhere else. It's just on the Watchdog page. And this issue makes it so that you can use the same user interface for specifying a date format to make it so that you have one place where you enter date formats instead of two places. Actually, I wasn't totally sure about this issue, but I didn't even see it come through, and I'm just like, well, sure, that seems fine. So 4425, that's been merged into 117. It was a real short-lived issue, though. If you want to hop in and provide some feedback on it, I think that would be fair enough. I guess it wasn't that short-lived. It was open back in May. But yeah, I'm thrilled to have things happen without my knowledge. I find that to be the best thing ever, that stuff can be open, discussed, reviewed, and then merged, like all amongst, you know, the community members that we have, like without my participation. I know I do most of the code reviewing, or I don't do most of the code reviewing. Back up. I do most of the merging. And I really appreciate having our other core committers in there pushing all of these things all the way to completion. So that's it for 117. Generally speaking, there's kind of going to be probably a light release in 117, but there's so many bug fixes that are happening that is just really wonderful. And I know some of our community members have been clamoring for, can we just slow down on the features and fix some of the issues we have? Whether it was intentional or not, that's the way 117 is shaping up. So I'm still really happy with all of the things that are happening throughout all of the development and backdrop core. I have to hop off because I have another scheduled meeting, and I apologize, but there's still general discussion here. Jen, would you be okay with taking that on? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. There's a section here for initiative updates, but neither Jeff nor Luke are around today for updates. So we'll skip over those and move on to general discussion. First one here, it says skip. Does that mean we don't need to talk about it?
I'll just say what it was. There's a long issue about being the ability to copy blocks and regions in core, and BW Panda this week basically said it looked like the consensus was to move this to contrib, and he closed the issue. And I was afraid that that issue would get lost. And then I think Doc Wilmot pointed out that in fact a contrib module had already been made based on that. So my fear was that that a contrib module hadn't been made. I didn't realize that, and that just closing the issue would lose all of that discussion. I do think that there is an interesting discussion about, like, if we do decide something should be better done in core, what is the best way to preserve and carry on that conversation. But it's not urgent that we do this right now.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think like long-term, we'll probably end up with another issue that's like add that module to core, and then we can have the discussion all over again. But it would be great to not, for someone to remember that we've had the discussion before. And even if we just link from the old issue to the new one, that would be fine. But I have no strong feelings about keeping the old issue open or not, if that's what people want to do. So
The discussion is still there even if you close the issue. So
it's just harder to find.
Sure. My fear in this case was that this was a feature that people really wanted. A decision was made that it should happen in contrib. Well, if you close the core issue, then there's no discussion anywhere about the fact that we want to have this issue. In this case, it turned out that wasn't the case because the module had already been made. But if the module hadn't been made, it's like it's no longer on our to-do list anywhere. And that was my fear. I wanted it, even if it's going to be in contrib, it should be on a contrib to-do list, right? So like maybe the appropriate thing is to open a contrib issue saying we want, we want this issue, or we want a contrib module for this that doesn't exist yet. We have port requests, but do we have a place where we can say, hey, this feature?
In that same issue, Hugh, I think there might even be a template for a like module idea or module wanted or something. Yeah, so that's the right place for it. But there are a bunch of issues in core that are like, it's still under debate whether that should be in core or contrib, and those should probably stay open. Okay. Next issue under general discussion. This is something that came up in our last meeting. We were talking about, there are a couple of issues related to design and usability right now that seem to be very contentious. And I'm not sure they're I'm not sure that this is necessary, but I wanted to talk about the process of escalating an issue to the PMC for review, because I've been feeling a little bit like it would probably be good for these issues to be escalated, but because I'm on the PMC, I didn't want to be the one to escalate them unless somebody else in the conversation specifically requested that. But then when I was looking at what our process is for issues getting escalated, and there isn't a very clear outline for anyone who's not a PMC member to escalate an issue to the PMC. And so I thought it might be useful to talk about what that process might look like. And if there could be some very clear criteria that PMC members could use to decide when an issue should be escalated. Because if there was something that said, any issue with more than 100 comments could be escalated to the PMC, then as a PMC member, I would feel much better about going in and being like, hey guys, do you want this escalated to PMC? Rather than feeling like we're taking the conversation out of the hands of people who feel really passionate about those particular issues. So I don't know how we should handle this, but like, how do we even move forward on deciding when to decide something should go to the PMC? Should we create a PMC issue requesting criteria for when an issue should be escalated to the PMC and have them decide if those are correct? Or is that something we should decide as a community without the PMC? Or should we decide as a community and then like run it by the PMC? If anyone has any feelings on this. Nobody knows anything. All right, here's what I'm going to propose. I'm going to create a PMC issue that asks for us to establish some clear criteria about when it will be okay for someone to come into an issue and say, we're escalating this to the PMC. And one of those criteria is going to be, we're going to ask people on the issue if they want this escalated to the PMC. And that way, if there's a place where I feel like we need to interrupt, like if there is some conflict that needs to be resolved, then we need to immediately take it out of the hands of the people who are in the conversation. We have the power to do that. But in most cases so far, it hasn't been a conflict so much. It's just a bunch of people with different opinions. And so I didn't feel good about like saying the PMC is definitely doing this. I would more want it to be like up to those people, like, hey, would you want some help coming to a consensus or a decision on what approach we should take for a particular problem? I'll open that in the PMC queue and say, hey, how would you guys feel about making these particular criteria when we can escalate an issue? And if everybody there thinks it's okay, then we'll publish it somewhere like in the forum and try and get some more feedback from the general community on whether there should be additional criteria added, vice versa. I mean, maybe we should do these things at the same time, forum post and PMC issue, so we can have a little more conversation about it. And then if we do see issues in the queue that are going on for a really long time and we're not getting to an answer, those are the kinds of things that can cause burnout in a community, is if you just have the same conversation going on for a long time. I'd like to, we have a process in place in theory to stop that from happening. I would like there to be more concrete examples on how to use that. Okay, I'll create a forum issue and a PMC issue to try and figure out what those criteria should be. And once we have it figured out, we'll put something public somewhere so everybody knows at any point, these are the things you can do to get something escalated. Like you can either specifically request it, or a PMC member can come and ask if you want to request it and you can say yes. Or if the issue reaches 100 comments, which is my threshold, I'm guessing, then say, okay, this is too much, we're escalating to PMC. Okay, I'll start there.
I feel that doing the similar thing to the thing that we're doing with the PMC, but instead of doing it at the top initial comment, someone from the PMC can go and say, or anyone from the community, would you like this to be escalated? And then people vote with thumbs up, thumbs down. And then if there's too many thumbs up, then we know that it's a sign that we should take it to the PMC.
Okay. And what that too many can be, I think
exactly.
It's over time. I was thinking like now, maybe just more than one. And then as our community grows, we could increase that to be like, has to be at least 3, has to be at least 4, whatever. Yeah. But I don't want it to be like one person really wants to escalate, nobody else does, and then it ends up, Okay.
So it's a bit ridiculous to say that the whole discussion reached 100 comments with only 2 people participating. It's probably going to be more than that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if it happens.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have some old business from last week. I don't know, Tim, did you add the stuff? Should we revisit? Greg?
Well, that was just on last week's agenda. I don't know that it needs to be addressed again.
Okay, I didn't know if there was anything unresolved that we wanted to revisit a week
Well,
later.
I've sort of stepped back a bit from the enforced password constraints discussion, but and it feels like that issue's moving okay right now.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
moving forward. We've discussed all aspects of it, and we're
Right.
probably moving towards the right
I
direction.
brought it up last week because it felt like it was approaching a log jam, but that's kind of broke, so.
Yep.
Well, and the site on the CSS one, I think we covered that well in the last meeting.
Okay.
So, and I wouldn't mind talking to some people after the call, but
Okay. Yeah, I have your pull request open and I'm looking forward to reviewing that. So if you want to stay on and talk about it later, I'm all in favor of that.
Yep.
But before we get to that, does anybody else have anything you want to bring up today that's not currently on the agenda?
Well, you can replace those two issues with the one that I mentioned before with markdown support in T functions.
Is that on
So
here already?
that's
are you asking to
no,
talk
it's not.
about
I
that?
don't, well, not now, but maybe we can bring it up next week. It would be, yeah. So I'll tell you the issue number, but I don't have edit access to the agenda.
What?
Yes, issue number is 4238.
Yep. Thanks. Oh, actually, that's the MySQL support.
Oh,
So the ticket
Yes.
with the one that
After update Red Hat 8, I cannot use backdrop, basically.
So the ticket number for the issue that I was mentioning, Jen, is 4535.
okay.
And the other one is MySQL. Yeah.
Wait.
So the PR that Nate has created for that one for MySQL 8 was back in December, and there's another paths available or many other in the d.org. So it needs to be reset.
Okay. Do you
But
want
yeah.
to do a high-level overview of Markdown and
I don't think that we have enough time to discuss it today. We can discuss it next time.
So put it on the agenda for next week.
okay.
Yes, exactly. Thanks.
All right. Will do. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and anyone who's interested in talking about conditionally added style sheets, feel free to stay on. I'm gonna turn off the live stream.